with everyone in the world with their own view. Ever wonder if God has a view?
And that's what the show's all about. What's God's view versus our view?
Topics that affect our daily life. Empowering and inspiring.
To develop a heart, a kingdom mindset,
Because God does have a view. Your host, Dr. Trudy Simmons, The Christian View.
Hi, welcome to The Christian View. What a great audience we have. Thank you all for being here. Thank you at home for watching, or if you're listening by radio or podcast. This is The Christian View, and we take today's hot and challenging topics and we weigh them against the Word of God, because God does have a view, and He has a view for you. We have a great topic today, a very hard topic, I think, but a great topic, and it's going to be on mental health. So don't turn the dial. Get your coffee, your Bible, and a piece of paper and a pen so that you can take notes and write down the scriptures that we use. Before we get into our topic, I want to introduce those sitting around the table. I have the beautiful Trudy Davis. Thank you for being here. Pastor Lee Adams, love having you. Candace, all the way from Nashville, thank you for being here. And Amy Sutherland, love having you. So check out their ministries. They're doing amazing things for the kingdom in addition to being a part of the Christian View. And I do want to remind y'all to check out our website. We have a new website out with the magazine on there, which is amazing. And then visit our YouTube channel. Lots of great things happening. Oh yeah, we do have t-shirts.
Yes.
We do have beautiful Christian View t-shirts and lots of great things coming up with the Christian View. So you don't want to miss that. So let's just talk about this topic, Lee, mental health. And we were talking before the camera went on that it's Mental Health Month awareness, it's breast cancer, and it's domestic violence. There's so much going on. And I think the latter two, breast cancer and domestic violence, feeds into mental health, and so I, think that they all feel to go together. But it says 1 in 5 adults will experience mental illness in their lifetime. That's 59 million adults. That's not even taking into account the children that are suffering from anxiety, depression. I mean, you name it. It's like the enemy is working overdrive, is what we said before the segment started. The enemy is working overtime, trying to just get our lives out of control. But in 3 John, it says this. God says, I pray that you may be in good health and that it will go well with you even as your soul prospers.
Yes.
God has a better way, Lee, doesn't He?
Yes, He does.
He does. Mm-hmm. So before we get into the better way, let's talk about what causes mental illness.
Well, mental illness really derives from a variety of things. When we first look at it, we begin to look at a person's cognitive, physical, social, behavioral functions. And when different things happen in our life, a lot of times stressors, different events, sometimes illnesses, and as we all have kind of gone through the pandemic and experienced that, anything, that lasts for a while. And when a person does not have a variety of good coping skills and cannot really bounce back, and things begin to affect your daily living activities. We look at what we call social determinants of health that really determine whether or not, a person, how they may fare when they're faced with certain crises in their life. And for me, most of you know that I actually run an agency that deals with mental health, substance abuse, and a variety of disorders. And when a person comes in and presents, we present them, they do what we call a biopsychosocial assessment.
Okay.
And in that, we're looking at biological factors, we're looking at psychological factors, and then we're looking at just how are they living, poverty, different things of that nature bring about different functions of how a person's well-being is. And anything that begins to last in a person's life over a long period of time can eventually begin to cause them to lose the ability to function. And I know that may sound far, stretch for some people, because many of us, regardless of what happened in our life, we seem to have the ability to be able to be resilient and bounce back. But there are some people who don't have that ability to be resilient and bounce back. But mental health, and I always tell people, when I'm talking just in general, I always tell people mental health and mental illness are not synonymous. Mental illness is the result of poor mental health. When you get a condition and you don't keep your mental health healthy, so to speak, eventually it can lead to mental illness.
Right.
Because I think that stigma that keeps people from seeking help a lot of times ends up causing mental illness
Right.
because they don't want to be labeled, they don't want to be diagnosed, and those things that come in. But stress, depression,
Right.
a grief, a loss.
And have you seen an increase in depression and stress and anxiety
Yes.
over the last couple of years?
During the pandemic, we have seen an increase in with the children, anxiety.
Yes.
We really have seen more and more anxiety-related situations where people are presenting and people just losing control, you know,
Right.
whereas people used to have that ability to be able to stay within a certain parameter and walls, people are really just losing control, and we see it in the news, you know, we wonder
Right.
like, wow, what would make someone just flip out like that?
And
you
why
know,
do you think that is? Because we are seeing it more in the news. Well, I saw that on the news the other day, this elderly woman got beat up on a bus, and I'm like, what would cause teenagers to go just beat up an elderly woman for no reason?
Well, it's that ability sometimes to not, when like you said, not be able to reason logically and present. You know, our mind is it's really a powerful
Yes.
instrument. And sometimes, you know, when we socialization really helps us to understand in relational aspects of how we deal with people. And when during the pandemic and we shut down a lot and we pulled away,
Right.
people lost that ability to be able to relate. And now they're lost that sense of reality that, you know, you can hurt someone and people don't realize how quickly you can lose control
Right.
when you're not practicing it. You know, we have to practice certain behavioral
Right.
practices on a daily
And
basis.
I think during that pandemic time, we got accustomed to
Yes.
being more isolated,
We did.
right? So the social skills kind of got a little lost in the
Yes.
isolation,
Most
which is
definitely.
kind of what, you know,
You're
a
saying.
great tool of the enemy to keep us isolated and keep us in seclusion so we can't function on a normal day-to-day level. We'll be right back with more on mental illness. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Christian View. We're talking today about mental illness. You know, and I think there's a lie, I guess I'm going to call it a lie, that we have to have it all together, right?
Right,
That we have to
exactly.
always be perfect, have it all together. We're not allowed to struggle. And I think, Trudy, it's even more so in the Christian surrounding atmosphere, or whatever you want to call it, circle. The Christian circle is that if you are walking with God, then you can't suffer. And you know, there's a statistic out there that says 95% of the people sitting in our pews are wearing a mask.
Yes.
They're afraid to be real. They're afraid to step out and say, I'm hurting. But let's just talk about that. If you're a Christian, can you still suffer from mental illness? I mean,
Yes. So the way we'd had said that question was like, can you walk with Jesus
Right.
and still suffer from mental illness? And so I was like, you know, I don't feel qualified to answer that question emphatically, yes or no,
Right.
one way or the other. So I like it like this. Can a Christian who's struggling with their mental wellness be healed?
Right.
So what we do know is that by his stripes we
Amen.
are healed. That is the word of God. And in Jesus's ministry, he never walked up to someone and said that was sick and said, oh, I can't help you. That's mental illness.
Right.
So as a
Right.
Christian,
Yes.
we know we have those tools.
Right.
And so therefore, as Christians, we must exercise our authority, our God-given authority to have power over anything that
Yes.
tries to dominate us. And we also have to claim our mental wellness with affirmations that say we have the mind of Christ, because that is definitely scriptural. And we declare that strongholds are broken
Amen.
from
Right.
our life. And you know, one thing I think is so important, and I hear it and it just hurts my heart when I hear it, is don't own it. Don't say,
Right.
my anxiety, my depression, my eating disorder, my addiction.
Right.
Because then, you know, that's not what God
that
says
becomes your
about you.
identity, and your
That's
identity
right.
is in Christ, and
And-
those are not part of your
Right.
identity, right?
And when we identify more with what the enemy says than what God says about us, that's when we kind of give
Right.
ourselves over to it. Not to say that it's easy and not to try to oversimplify mental illness.
Right.
Because it is a true entity all in itself.
It is real, and it's affecting so many people, Amy. It's just on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think it's really good what you said, Trudy, because I think, you know, always we have to go back to the Word and let the Word work us. You know, let it have its way in us. The Word says to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. Let the Word wash over your your mind and renew your thoughts, because oftentimes, back to what you were saying, Lee, is it happens through an abuse often. And so there's a fracture that happens in our physical psyche, and it will actually detach. So that part of us, it has to get healed, and then we can kind of restore everything back to the way that the Lord originally intended. But the best way to do that is to go before the Lord and put that word inside of us. He even says in Romans that the mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. So our spirit still can cause our mind to come into that alignment. You know, it takes work,
Right.
and it's hard work.
It's hard work.
It's really hard work with mental.
You know, but I do think one thing, you know, Candace, is that we need to be okay with talking to someone about it, because again, you know, we can't, when something is brought into the light, there is healing and there is deliverance. But if we're hiding it, which again is a tool of the enemy, don't tell anybody that you're struggling, because they're going to judge you, they're going to think this way. But it's okay. I mean, I struggled with depression for years, and you know, the Lord healed me, thankfully, of depression. And so it's nothing to be ashamed of.
But we live in a fallen, broken world, and it's easy to see if somebody's walking around with a broken arm or a broken leg.
Absolutely.
But when somebody's heart is broken, or they have experienced so much pain and suffering, it's not easy to just look at it. And I do think there is a lot of people suffering in the body of Christ. And like you said, we need to be honest and articulate, this is what we are experiencing, because it's also in the Bible. Jesus, as you said, healed many people with mental illness. Paul talked about there's the fightings within, the struggles within, the fightings without. Jesus was a man of compassion and yet sorrow. Jeremiah was called, you know, the crying prophet, the weeping prophet. And the Psalms are full of David crying out to the Lord. So it is there, but the thing is we do have resources, but we can't unless we say, I'm really struggling here.
And I think, too, to that point, we have to be careful who you talk to.
Yes.
You know, it's very important. You know, Jesus had his 3, you know, and then he had his 12, and then he had his, 120? We've got to be very mindful when we are sharing, who we're sharing to, you know, make sure it's the right people who have the right heart, and it's a safe place.
And that they're going to feed into you words that are going to get you out of that oppression. Not just encourage you and tell you all of their problems as well, because that's not where God is.
Speaking life into the situation. And I think about Elijah, right? I mean, he struggled
from depression,
right
after his mountain
It usually comes right after a victory.
And that's so important, because you know, a lot of times I teach people, as you know, be transparent, because a lot of times people will think, okay, you don't understand, but Jesus, he was the same way. You know, he was touched with the feelings of our infirmities, and therefore even us, as we practice in our careers, we understand. I know recently I lost a very, very close friend of mine, and even though, you know, I was being strong and, you know, on the outside looking very well and holding everybody else up, it wasn't, I mean, if I had to diagnose myself, I had a brief period of depression, you know, that I went through, and when I really realized it, you know, thank God for the scripture, Isaiah 26:3, that he'll keep us in perfect peace if our minds are stayed on him. And I think that's the thing that we have to help people. Yes, we will briefly go through situations, but the answer is getting back to putting our mind on Christ, knowing that this is his desire for us. Beloved, I would above all things that you prosper and be in good health. Yes, we're going to have these things that come. I'm bad at psychoanalyzing people, you know, a brief conversation, but I go through the Bible. Even Christ himself, you know, in the Garden of Gethsemane, I would have said he had anxiety, you know. He was really, he was there, you know, really clinically depressed, you know, sweat as great drops of blood, you know. It was really that whole thing. We get to see it, but we know we don't have to stay in that place.
Absolutely, and that's the point. We don't have to stay. To everything, there's a season. There's hope in Christ. Our pastor always says, keep it vertical. If we can keep our eyes fixed on him and not on the situation around us, then that's where our hope's going to be. We'll be right back with a little bit more on mental illness here on The Christian View. Don't go away. Welcome back to The Christian View. We're talking today about mental illness, you know, and we've talked a little bit about, you know, everybody struggles, right? Amy, everyone is going to struggle at some point in their life with mental illness, with some tragedy in their life. You know, and you may not be a counselor, you may not have all the tools in your tool belt to help people who have struggled through mental illness, but let's talk about ways we can support people who do struggle, because we're going to come in contact with people.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great question, because I feel like there's a wide variety of answers, but I think, first of all, I lean towards, the word, like I already mentioned earlier. So I think, really as a person, if you're trying to help someone, is not to really speak from our own understanding, because oftentimes it can be a spiritual issue.
Right.
So we need to pray for discernment, to ask the Lord, is this something in the physical? Is this a spiritual oppression? And then go into prayer about it. Secondly, I was already thinking about how you mentioned Jesus was always motivated with compassion. Yes. And oftentimes, I think people have a hard time coming forth with this because they do feel so judged, and it feels taboo. But if we really lean into the love of the Lord, which covers a multitude of sins and wrongs, and you might not even have sin, but it's just that shame that the enemy wants to bring over you. And I think another thing is to be wise of the enemy's schemes, because he uses the culture, the media, the things around us to really pounce on people, to oppress them in their mind and in their thoughts. I'm reminded in Romans 12:2 in the Passion Translation, it says, "Stop imitating the ideals and the opinions of the culture around you, but be inwardly transformed by the Holy Spirit through a total reformation of how you think. This will empower you to discern God's will as you live a beautiful life, satisfying in His perfect eyes." And I think that's just something we all have to put before us, because we can easily, it's just a thought. Dr. Carolyn Leaf, she's a Christian neuroscientist, and she says that our thoughts, once you have that negative thought, it actually will grow like a tree, like a branch. And there's so many parallels even in the Bible of, our minds and trees. And when we see that, we want to be deeply rooted in the Word, so that we have deep roots in the Word that can break those bad branches, prune the thoughts, and get it off, at the beginning, so it doesn't grow.
It's so good. But another good point, I think, Lee, is we can't discount the way they feel.
That's right.
Right? We can't say, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or we've got to, acknowledge how they feel. Give them the Word, but acknowledge how they feel.
Yeah, and that's part of in person-centered organizational practices. That's one of the things we do. We begin by looking at trying to get an understanding, and the ultimate goal is, I teach the course to a lot of the clinicians that are coming on board to work, and other agencies. But the biggest thing I always remind people is the goal is to support and not to fix.
Right.
And in that supporting, you really want to help, like Trudy said, get to understanding what they feel, and in that there's a practice you can do is like asking them what's important to them, and once they tell you all what's important to them and why you hear why it's important to them, then begin to outline what's important for them. And you help them sometime to see the blend between what's important to and what's important for, and then sometimes helping them to say, okay, well, if this is important to you, but this is really important for you, how do you take those things out? But it doesn't diminish how they feel. And you allow them to express themselves. Well, why do you really want to do that? But then say, okay, well, if you do that, then does it meet this need of what's important for you? And you have the greatest challenge I've had, even all these years later, is being able to step back and allowing them to function and make that decision for themselves.
Exactly. I don't think we shouldn't be making the decisions for them. We can offer them prayer. We can offer them support, but we can't
do it.
What is it they say? You can lead the horse to the
water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
But that was one of the things that everyone has said. We need to listen and allow them to share as much as they want to. And I thought another thing is encouraging them towards getting self-care, whether it's their eating, whether it's exercising, or getting good rest. And sometimes it's encouraging them to get a full physical. A friend of mine suffered with depression for years. So she went in for her physical, and her thyroid was so messed up. When they took care of her thyroid, her depression went away. Now, I'm not saying everyone's is that case, but I'm saying just sometimes it's saying, how can we support you to get the help you need? And even saying, I will take you. And maybe even starting with your pastor at your church, praying that your church is a place of refuge. But going there and then saying, do we know of a solid biblical counselor, who can speak into this person's life.
I think that's true because it could be spiritual, it could be a chemical imbalance, it could be trauma from your past,
Yes.
right? And I think you go back to your point, but we can't own it. Whether it's spiritual, whether it's trauma, whether it's a physical imbalance, trauma, we can't own it, right?
Because as Christians, we do bear the responsibility to take our thoughts into
Right.
captivity,
That's so good.
to apply God's word. And so, yes, we all suffer from time to time, but it's like, do you make it a stepping stone to
Right.
take you to the next
Right.
level? Because, and the verse I just love about this whole topic is that God is near to the brokenhearted.
Absolutely.
And He will
Yeah.
never forsake us, and He'll never leave us. So sometimes we feel very alone
Right.
when we feel depressed, but just knowing that God loves us and He will never leave us.
Yeah,
This morning I woke up and I was just feeling overwhelmed. It's been a crazy week. I was feeling overwhelmed, and I put this a little thing on social media. I was like, the Lord said, okay, get up. No matter how you're feeling, because our feelings are going to lie to us, get up, get dressed, show up, and let the Lord do the rest.
Yes.
Right? It's putting that, it's stepping out in faith. Even if we're not feeling like it, we're going to move forward because we know that God is for us. And if God is for us, who can stand against us? And we can fight the enemy,
Yes.
through the power of His word.
And movement, just
Right.
movement alone does take you to the next level. And before you know it, one step after another step. I always say
Right.
the
Yeah.
victorious life is lived one day at a time. And it
Absolutely.
takes that decision of just getting up and doing it,
Right.
whether you feel like it or not. And in our society, we do care so much what our feelings are.
Right.
And, we don't see that as a biblical role model.
no.
But I
As
don't
a
think Jesus felt like going to the
Family member, I
cross.
think some things we can do is just say, can I pray for
Oh,
you?
yes.
Can
Yeah,
I just pray with you?
Yes.
Right.
And I'm here, I'm present. And sometimes that
Yes.
helps. And then do these things.
Yes.
Because
Oh, I was just going to say I had a dream recently, and it actually ties in perfectly. It was one of the things I was going to mention was this person needed prayer, and they were like a missionary, and the Lord was watching me to see what I was going to do in the dream, and so I went to pray for him, and I had to separate his problem from him himself. And as I prayed, literally it was almost like a piece of his skin detached from the person, and it was literally separate. And the Lord was showing me, you have to separate, whatever the issue is, and it might not even be sin, but here this man, he needed healing.
Right.
And it goes back to not owning it.
Yeah. I remember talking to a client who was going through a divorce. I said, thank goodness you're not your divorce.
Yes.
Thank goodness. We have to claim who we are in Christ, not what's going on around us, and then we become victorious. We'll be right back with more here on The Christian View. Don't go away. Welcome back to The Christian View. We've had a great discussion today on mental illness. And remember, it is okay to not feel good all the time. It's okay to have bad days. But if you are struggling, I encourage you to reach out for help. Call 988. That's a hotline you can call if you're struggling with any type of suicidal thoughts. Know God loves you. We'll see you next time.